Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. So we have some new polls as of Tuesday, September 18th, and this won't be a daily poll, tracker, mainly because we have some very significant polls from these races, again, like we did on Monday, September 17th. It seems like these, polling areas are pretty much coming out with new polls that are very interesting. They're not kind of just like Passover days like Sunday, September 16th, Saturday, September 15th, where we didn't get too many polls, and if they were from states that we had already covered, or states like Kansas, New Mexico, not too important to the Senate makeup, not too important to the House makeup, but we are seeing some Senate polls today. Total of 4 of them. We are seeing some governor polls, a total of 3 of them, and then 2 congressional races, which we will cover very briefly, and we're not going to cover that Rasmussen Reports poll. But overall, we're looking at the data here, and we see a little bit of red compared to what we see on other days. Yes, there is red there, but some days it's just pretty much Democratic territory. Right now, we have just gotten a new poll from Texas. I made a whole video about this, so I'm going to talk about it very briefly. Ted Cruz leads by 9%. Statewide in the state of Texas. That is huge. I mean, right now this race should have gotten a lot closer, especially with all this new campaigning for Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz doing not so much. All this talk about yard signs, I get it, but Ted Cruz seems to be holding firm in these polls. So right now Ted Cruz leads by 9%. So for right now, Quinnipiac shows Ted Cruz ahead. This could be an outlier. It could not be, but at this point in time, it's the most recent poll, and it doesn't show any good news for the Democrats, with only 1% of undecided voters. Again, not so much to go there, and chances are that 1% are majority Republicans. For the Wisconsin Senate race there, Tammy Baldwin leads by 11%. Not too much different, just an expanded lead for Tammy Baldwin. Before, she led by 8%, and then by 14% in an Emerson poll, but the most recent before this one, she led by 8%. So this race finishing off with an average of a plus 11% for Tammy Baldwin. I expected her to win there. In the Michigan Senate race there, Debbie Stabenow leading by double digits. Not unexpected whatsoever. Overall, if you look at all these polls, not much has changed. Yes, the most recent poll showed her ahead by 23%, taken back in September. Not back in September, it's currently September. But still, looking at these numbers, going to be an easy race for the Democrats there. So, not much to see in Wisconsin or Michigan, even though they were both won by Donald Trump in 2016. Again, not too much to see there. Just the Rust Belt is showing a little bit more blue tendencies than previously thought. For the Virginia Senate race there, again, nothing real. This is a Clinton state. Tim Kaine leads by 16%. Again, I do not see any possibility for the GOP there. It's a likely Democratic state. We're not going to see much for the GOP there. Their odds have consistently gotten worse and worse, especially nominating someone like Corey Stewart. Even though it was a contested GOP primary, it was never good to nominate someone like him, especially in a state like Virginia, which is pretty much ran by Northern VA, because if you take the rest of it, it isn't really too Democratic compared to where Northern Virginia is. And overall, they typically do decide the outcome of the races in terms of population. Doesn't make them any less Virginia than the rest of Virginia, but overall, population centers are packed, and that's probably where Tim Kaine is going to get a lot of his votes from, but that doesn't really change anything in terms of the Senate race. It was just something to add on to it. I know some people have talked about Virginia splitting in half, and then one state becoming one other state, whatever. Doesn't make sense. But typically you see that in areas where this is a GOP state, if you cut out the population centers, cut out the urban centers, and states like California, where some people, very, very slim minority, want to, get rid of the state itself and then split off into multiple states, didn't happen, but people want it to happen in California, possibly Texas, in different areas where they want to just get rid of those certain areas they don't necessarily agree with, so that way they have more of an electoral presence in terms of their vote, and it isn't just taken away by people that don't necessarily agree with their ideals or don't understand their ideals. But overall, Tim Kaine leading by 16%, nothing new. The Wisconsin governor's race, this only solidifies Scott Walker's very, very, very steep climb towards re-election. He's going for a third term against, believe the Wisconsin State Superintendent, if I'm not mistaken. I think the bio will bring me to his page. But overall, Tony Evers, I believe, is leading by 4.7%. So I guess he was an educator his entire life. We're not going to keep going through this because that's not too important to this video. But overall, leading by 5% of the most recent poll, not the worst thing. This is a race that many people did think the GOP would pretty much hold on to, mainly because Scott Walker is one of those, I believe he may have been one of two, or one of a couple governors who have actually survived recall elections and then went on to win after surviving a recall election, and now he's going for his third term. So yes, Wisconsin could be I guess, theoretically tired of him, but earlier polling data didn't suggest so. But his approval rating polls aren't necessarily helping him, and neither are these new polling data. Neither is this new polling data that's showing the Democrat ahead by 5%. For the Michigan governor race, Gretchen Whitmer leading by 9%. That does not look good for the GOP either. They currently have a GOP incumbent, as they do in Wisconsin. Seems like the Rust Belt itself is becoming a little bit more Democratic than many people did expect. Having a Democrat win in an open seat by 9% would not be good for the GOP, and that's exactly what this poll is suggesting. Having a Democrat ahead by 9% never looks good when you currently have a GOP incumbent governor, especially in a governor's race where the GOP typically does better, where they currently hold 33 seats to the 16 for the Democrats and 1 independent. They always do better at state and local elections because, again, they're able to get voters out in some off years or just get outreach in terms of fiscally conservative elections, and when it doesn't come down to the national implications. They're not going to get a GOP senator from Maryland in the Senate. I just said that, but for the governor's race, it wasn't too out of the question. Same thing in Massachusetts. They did have one, but that's likely because, again, the GOP organizes very well in special elections and off-election years. But typically when it comes down to presidential elections and mainly midterms, Senate elections, House elections don't really flip too much. I remember Larry Hogan, my governor, ran for House of Representatives a while ago, and he lost, but he was the closest GOP competitor against Steny Hoyer, who's currently the Democratic minority whip. So that was a pretty interesting race. I believe it was because his dad was the former representative from the race, the district itself. But overall, he was the closest competitor for that race, but still didn't get elected to the House. Even with all that name recognition, he still didn't win in my county either in terms of the governor's race, but it was closer than previously expected. For the Texas governor race, Abbott leads by 19%. Again, looking at this data before, it could have gotten a lot closer. I mean, if we look at the earlier data, I don't know if it's necessarily on here, but before, the race wasn't as close. Closer than it is now. Yes, they were double-digit leads, but they weren't nearing 19% consistently. Yes, there was one poll that showed a 19% lead, but Quinnipiac with +9, then +12, then +19, but then it went back to +12, +10, +16, +13, and now it's nearing that 20% mark consistently. It's not fluctuating. It is going right back to 19, 20, 19, 19, spread 19.3%. So overall, we're going to see a pretty solid Texas GOP hold in the governor's race. No real chance, and that likely could lead Ted Cruz over the finish line in the Senate race there. Only 2 House races to really cover. One from the Florida 26th District. This is a race that the Democrats do think they have a huge shot at flipping, but right now the Republican leads by 3%. In the 39th District of California, the Republican leads by 10%. So this is a toss-up race. Both of these are. This one is considered a toss-up by RCP, and currently the Republican leads by 10%. She's not an incumbent, so keep that in mind. Very interesting there, but also pretty Republican of a district compared to the other ones. For the Florida 26th District, there currently is an incumbent GOP representative who is Carlos Curbelo, if I'm not mistaken, currently rated a toss-up, but this one is a little bit closer, but still a Republican lead by 3% isn't too bad, especially leading up into the elections where we're running out of time for both political parties. Overall general conclusion, the Rust Belt solidifying a little bit more for the Democrats. Texas going a little bit more to the right, and these 2 House races not too good for the Democrats there. For the president's approval rating, I said I wouldn't cover it, but still disapprove +3. Rasmussen has consistently been either overestimating the president or all the other polls are wrong. One way or another, this poll definitely makes its mark by being sometimes incorrect or sometimes too correct. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I'll see you all tomorrow.